Welcome back to the Sports Business Leaders Podcast. Today we're joined by Christian Henze. Thanks for joining the show, Christian.
Justin, really excited to be on. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Christian is the Chief Strategy Officer at the Premier Lacrosse League. Christian oversees league strategy, corporate development, and youth operations for one of the most innovative leagues in professional sports. And since joining the PLL, Christian has played a major role in the league's rapid growth, including media partnerships, expansion strategy, youth development, initiatives, and the transition to a city-based model. The PLL, as many people know, was founded by Paul Rabel and Mike Rabel and has helped reshape professional lacrosse through a fast-paced product, player-focused business model, and a modern approach to media, fan engagement, and league operations. So, Christian, we're excited again to dive into the conversation. Before we ask you these first questions, we'd love to hear more about your journey, your professional career, and also some of your background.
Yeah, so I really started my career in company building. I was really lucky to get hired by some very smart entrepreneurs who had just graduated from Stanford Business School. And they were running a portfolio of gym companies, and they were having trouble getting financing for those gym companies. So they hired me to help them with the gym companies. And about 3 months later, we were running a lending business. So I was one of the first five in the room, and we scaled that up into about a 150 person organization. In the midst of that, we sold it to a business based in the UK and then had an exit from there. So I had this really unique first experience getting to learn to work at an early stage organization. And that's really kind of where my primary passion was and what I was looking forward to doing next after we got that first exit. Sports kind of came second to that. Now, I've always been a really big sports nerd, and I was doing a lot of structured credit analysis at my last company and found it a lot more interesting to be reading John Wall Street articles, which were just starting to come out, and getting into sports and media podcasts and hearing how the industry was moving. So one of my former colleagues, Mike Rabel, called me up and let me know he was starting a pro lacrosse league with his brother Paul. Now, I was also a lacrosse player, so this definitely hit really hard home for me on something that I was very excited about and passionate about. So was originally very interested. And then they started talking to me about the innovative approaches they were taking with the tour-based model and how they were going to grow the league and be very player first. And I was completely locked in. So jumped on board with the PLL. I think I wouldn't say I was there the first day, but I was at the first formal meeting where there were about three of us there. And 8 years later, almost 8 years to the day, we're humming along. It's been a great run.
Yeah, this is really exciting, Christian. One of my good friends is Luke Weirman, who's the face-off guy at the Denver Outlaws, and just getting to know you as well over the past couple of months. It's been really cool, and congratulations on everything you've built with the PLL. It's been, as I'm sure we'll learn more about later, a really cool journey. For those of us who don't necessarily know much about the PLL, can you just give us a quick overview of what the league really is?
Yeah, so what we've really built is a lacrosse platform business, and it's evolved over time. So we've got an 8-team men's professional touring league that's in 8 home markets. We recently launched a 4-team women's professional touring league. We've got a pretty robust youth business that's really focused on grassroots and growing the sport. We have a media arm that services a number of areas within the lacrosse landscape. We've got a merchandise business, and then, of course, like all good sports leagues, we've got a media sponsorship business and media rights business as well. So it's something that we've really been evolving over time. And I think when it first started, it just started as a league, but really servicing a lot of the sport and getting in and really growing the sport is key and essential for us. So that's how we thought about building this platform, being able to create multiple layers and then tack on those verticals and then being able to sell them and more effectively monetize at the professional level too. And we've seen other groups like Love Volleyball have done a fantastic job integrating multiple verticals of volleyball into their platform. Those are all things that we've done. I think we've looked at and we've done on our own a bit as well and found a lot of success, and we'll keep moving the ball forward on that.
Yeah, just thinking about some of the other emerging leagues that are out there. I know there's leagues that are doing a lot of creative things in the sports ecosystem as a whole. So it's cool to hear about the traveling aspects of the game, and I think you're up to some really cool things. So just thinking about the innovative side of the business, can you talk about what are some of those new things that you've implemented into the PLL that you believe the sport needed to make it more engaging and interactive for the audience?
Yeah, well, and I'll say, yeah, startups, I say are like dog years the way you live them, but 8 years for a sports league still feel like a baby, and we're still building this. So emerging, but, still moving our way forward. So I think the first thing that Mike and Paul brought to me when we first had that discussion was the tour-based model, and that was super innovative. There really wasn't anyone doing that at a team sport level. Of course, you had it in Formula One, golf, and tennis are all tour-based series, but at a team sport level, nobody had done that, and I found that really compelling for a couple reasons. One, it immediately got us to being national, so we're able to pick and choose our markets, go into places like Utah, which has become a great market for us, which wouldn't have had lacrosse in a regular home base if we got in home cities right away. It allowed us to get to key areas like New York City and Maryland where you have to be for the sport of lacrosse because it's so massive there. So that was a big change. I think with it financially too, structurally, you get a lot of operating leverage in the tour-based model. You get all of your staff, all of your players, all of your event ops on site for a single event. And then you're monetizing that entire weekend with all of your games. So there was a lot of good financial operational leverage that made a ton of sense to me when I was first looking at this and evaluating it. And that was really Mike and Paul's brainchild, and they were really smart to come up with that. I think the second piece, which I got to spend a lot of time in the creation of, was being really thoughtful about building our own web and app products and not outsourcing to third parties as much. What that's allowed us to do is create our own customized databases and learn more about fans. And as I've been in this business now for 8 years, it's just, I mean, the engine of a sports league are their fans, and being fan focused and fan understanding so creating mechanisms through our web and app where we can customize programs for our fans and learn directly from them and then be able to service them was a really, really big change that I think other larger sports leagues hadn't done as much when they were first going, and other emerging leagues were hesitant to do. Even in year one, we were kind of outsourcing a lot. Our web and app was done through a third party. We weren't collecting any data. And I put my head together with our head of product at the time and said, well, how can we do this better? And that was a big adjustment that we made. And it's allowed us to do a lot of things across the entire sport too, and really create some unique gamified properties, which we get really excited about. That led me into spending a lot of time in sports betting. Prior to that, there were no betting lines for the sport of lacrosse. And I was really lucky to work with some great people. One in particular, Sarah Slane, who was an advisor to us, who got sports betting on the map for the entirety of the sport of lacrosse, which was really exciting. So I think leaning into those areas. And then the third was just being really player focused. And probably the most unique thing about the PLL is that Paul was actually a player in the league when he first started the league as well. But that allowed us to have a really player focused mindset. With the big piece that you saw recently with the PGA Tour fall and lead was giving our players equity in what we're doing. And coming from a Silicon Valley background where every employee's playing a huge role in building the company and you get rewarded with equity for that. We thought, well, why not give that to our players? They're doing so much. They are the key central focus. That's what our fans are latching onto. Their fans don't know and don't care who Christian Henze is and what he's doing. I can create mechanisms to put our players in a great position to be successful, but it's ultimately the players that are the driving force behind all of this. So I think giving them equity was such a unique and innovative step that, again, Mike and Paul, and I'll even say Paul, especially being a player, was really passionate about. And it was just so exciting to be able to do that. And then it was validating to see the PGA Tour in their battles with Live trying to counteract some of the things in the capital that was being put into Live and being given to players, giving their tour players equity in the new entity that they created. That was cool to see that a few years after.
Wow, I really didn't even realize the different layers to the PLL. What I find very interesting is that it seems like you've done this, you're ahead of the 8 ball on a lot of different things, and you have the traveling aspect similar to what a Savannah Banana has, or even Unrivaled Basketball. And then with the equity within the league, I know Unrivaled is also doing that as well, the 3v3 basketball tournament. So you're seems to be very ahead of the game, and it's really, really cool. Just I'm peeling the layers back to the onion, just learning more about what you have built. And so you're trying to keep a lot of different stakeholders happy, both with the fans, the coaches, the players, and the stakeholders within the business. And so how do you balance innovation with building long-term fan loyalty and community engagement?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think this was something that we faced a few years ago. So we were tour-based, non-geo affiliated at the time. So we were going to, a market like Utah, and the Atlas Lacrosse Club were playing the Whipsnakes Lacrosse Club, but they had no affinity. And this starts back to our data. So because we collected all this first party data, we were looking at it and just seeing people really, really like the league, but they weren't fans of the team. the teams. And from my perspective, true passion comes from team affinity, and players can play a role in that. And I think have played an increasing role in that in recent years. But still, there's nothing like home affinity and community. And I truly don't think that's going away. So as we looked at this data, we were started to figure out how can we build that team affinity. And one piece of data we looked at that was really interesting was our merchandise data. The majority of our items that were purchased, other than jerseys, were league items. So if you recall the Rob Lowe meme where he's wearing the NFL hat, that was like the PLL. It was everyone wearing, PLL hats around. So like, okay, we need to build affinity for teams. How can we put geos in a tour-based model? So we collected a lot of data, built scorecards, we visited markets, and then ultimately landed on our first 8 markets where we would tour through those markets and play 2 home games per year and sell weekend passes as our version of season tickets. So that's how we've really tried to match this kind of innovation with what's, I think, important in traditional sports as well. It was a multi-year process to get there, but it's paid massive dividends. Even last weekend, we had opening weekend in Utah. The place was buzzing. And Utah is one of our best markets. It's an incredible fandom. I think the Archers a couple years ago, maybe last year, won best sports team in all of Utah after winning the championship. But the place was nuts. We had vuvuzelas being blown and crowd noise was off the charts, and people get really excited to come out and see the Archers play. And that's just a level of passion that we didn't quite have in before we moved to the geo-based model. So that was an important change in evolution for the league. I think it showed that we can be nimble and be innovative at the same time, and kind of harken back to some of the important things that are traditional in sports that matter too.
I appreciate you sharing that. And one thing that I just kept on thinking about as you're talking is how the fans nowadays, especially the younger generation with Gen Z, people that are currently under 30 years old, most of them, when you were talking about how to develop a true fanhood, they have to be fans of specific teams. And I agree, but I also do recognize the fact that a lot of younger people are also fans of specific people. And I've started to notice that as a trend just with learning through sports business leaders and talking with more people that are on the team and operator side of the business. So I just thought that was interesting right there. And I'm sure there's things that you're thinking about to continue to attract younger people as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think across all age demos, the key to a big key to fandom is community, and that community can rally around interest in a player. It could rally around having identity tied to a home market. And we try to really pull on those strings and build that community. So, some of it is, a lot of it now is geo affiliated. Some of it is, some of fandom still is tied to players. We're only in 8 markets right now and we cover a large geographic swath, but we're not hitting every single market in the US and we're still trying to pull on fandom in those areas. So, star power is essential, tying people to players. It could be their college affinity, which is how we first started. Those are all key ingredients to this. But I do think the central geo piece is the best method and an ongoing method that will happen in sports.
Yeah, and this just reminded me of another person that we had on the podcast, Brett Johnson from Benevolent Capital. He's also one of the owners of Rhode Island FC, which is a USL team. And they have Centerville Bank Stadium, which is up in Pawtucket, Rhode
I'll
Island.
talk it. We're actually playing there this weekend.
No way. That's
Yeah.
too funny. Well, this is, yeah, too ironic. What they've been able to do in that market specifically, they've, I believe, doubled the attendance from years past to last year. I don't think all the numbers are out for this year, but that's just an example up in Pawtucket, a really engaged audience where they don't really have another team. And so I think these underserved communities can rally behind a team if they believe in what it is that what the team stands for, or just different things that maybe even the players stand for too.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the iterations of spring football as well, the teams that have done the best are places like St. Louis, who had the Rams, lost the Rams, and then they really attached to a new affinity. And we've seen even at PLL, a lot of our smaller markets that don't get as much lacrosse are our most passionate markets because places where they're getting a ton of college lacrosse and have had pro lacrosse in the past and whatnot, they're still getting a lot of high quality and they love it. But the places like when we go to Utah, it's crazy there. When we go to California, it's just it's unmatched. It's unbelievable. So Minnesota's a market that we've returned to, I think, pretty much every year since we started the league. So much passion in that market, and that was almost ended up being one of our home markets. And ultimately, I think we will have a team in the Midwest. because we've got good Midwest representation in fandom. But yeah, it's really exciting when you go into a market and you can feel the community and you can feel the passion. It's a real game changer to the environment, and that just makes our weekends. It's so fun.
Definitely, definitely, and nothing against the Mid-Atlantic region. I mean, we're based in Philadelphia, but I think just to your point, there are so many options to watch lacrosse from the elite level high school with leagues like the Interac and even with the Ivy League being in this area. So I agree that I think a lot of these, like you said, with the example with UFL football, how a lot of the successful teams are in those cities like St. Louis.
Yeah, and they've got other sports teams too. I mean, really passionate sports professional fan bases and whatnot, and that translates over too. But it gives you a lot of variety to pick from as well.
And so, for a league like the PLL, how do you think you should approach innovation differently? And how do you think about innovation differently than maybe a legacy league like the NFL or MLB when it comes to fan engagement specifically?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. So I think one thing that we figured out at the PLL, which I'd say is very traditional, is how important distribution is. So our linear distribution is essential. We're playing, several games on ABC annually, and those are driving the largest attendance and audience because that's where fans are. ABC's in the most homes, and that's really, really important for us in growing fandom, keeping fandom, retaining fandom, and what. I'd also say, like when we first started the league, especially in year one, we built the league on the backs of social media. Social media has incredible distribution. That's where our fans are. So, in that sense, it's really important to be traditional. And through those distribution methods, it allows us to get great partners like Nike, Gatorade, Whirlpool, Progressive, who also serve as distribution partners to us as well. When we do a partnership with Nike or Gatorade, they're reposting that through their channels. And, they've got ton of following and that they can be very, very impactful and influential in sports. So I don't want to overlook those traditional channels. They're essential. Where I think we've been very innovative has been on the first party data collection side, which I talked a little bit about earlier, in building our own web and app products and being able to be customized. I mean, we have an in-house data and engineering team, product and engineering team that's north of 8 people, maybe even 10 now. It's growing so quickly. And they're constantly refiguring our product and trying to be really, really acute on what our fans want and how we can deliver for them. Because at the end of the day, just being fan focused is that game changing methodology, and ownership over products is important. I mean, even you see with the Savannah Bananas, and I know everyone talks about them and how successful they've been. They built their own in-house ticketing system, customized to provide great experiences for their fans. That takes real thought, real investment, and real innovation. So I think it's really important to figure out what are the legacy sources that you should continue to work with and implement. I think distribution is essential on that. And then where are places where you should be building your own properties, building your own operations, building your own in-house capabilities. It doesn't just have to be a product, it could be an in-house capability. A lot of folks will go use consultants, third parties, and whatnot. And we certainly have a few who've been very, very beneficial to us. But we've built a lot in-house. And that's kind of the Silicon Valley DNA that I think was really important to Mike, really important to Paul, really important to Andrew Sittenberg, our COO, and really important to me in coming over. I mean, Mike and Paul are both entrepreneurs by nature. Andrew was at Spartan Race, which is very entrepreneurial. And then I was, building a tech company with Mike. So that was really essential for us in being core to our DNA as well. I always joke, if someone walked through the PL offices, they came to our LA offices, they'd say this looks a lot more like a Silicon Valley tech startup than it does a professional sports league. But we certainly have DNA of both. And as we get bigger in scale, you also have to be really thoughtful about, as you add on layers, where are you doing that? Are you doing that more on your own? Are you building up your own products, or are you doing that with third parties? It's a very critical kind of eye on figuring out sort of getting your signal to noise ratio right and making sure you're focusing and spending time building the things that are going to be most impactful, that are most customizable, and then finding the really valid areas where you can outsource as well.
And one person that we recently had on the podcast is Anthony Brock, who's the VP of analytics at the Philadelphia Flyers. They recently released their fan app, and one thing that resonated from what you just mentioned there is keeping the fans at the center of the action, making sure that they're always the experience is always being enhanced. And just one example from the conversation with Anthony, which I think relevant to this conversation is with the app, for example, one small tweak they made is they literally just had an interactive map within the app of the Xfinity Mobile Arena, and that's something that it's a small tweak, but can have a huge impact if done the right way and if there's value added. So I think that that's just one small example, and I think that's something that is clear that the PLL is focused on, which is keeping the fans at the center of the story.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool example, and I think we're seeing more sports organizations leaning into this. I think there's over the last 10 years, and more, there's been more, maybe 20 years, more sophisticated capital coming into the sports landscape, and these teams and leagues are going from being family businesses to real proper entities, and folks are investing more on owned and operated, and that's a perfect example.
Definitely. I think Wrexham is a great example, just
Yeah,
how over in a short amount of time they've just blown up, and so that's obviously a popular trend nowadays is for American investors to get involved in overseas clubs. But regardless, I just think that's a good example of how the sports economy as a whole has really matured over the past 5 and even 10 years, really.
100%.
Yeah, cool. Well, Christian, this has been a really great conversation. And just to round out what you've had to say, any advice that you'd like to give entrepreneurs in the space since you come from an entrepreneurial background?
Yeah, certainly can provide a few points. So I think the first is this is a difficult industry. It's hard. Building a sports team or league is not for the faint of heart. So keep on trucking and keep on trucking through. This is it's a difficult space to be in, but it's a really fun and rewarding space to be in. I think something that I've said a few times here that just keeps resonating for me is be fan first and fan focused. If you're in the sport emerging sports industry, that's really, really, really important. I'd say focus on building community first and fandom first and bring revenue and profitability second. If you build fandom and you build community, revenue and profitability will surely follow. I would say it's pretty important to get a great group of investors who understand that as well. We are very fortunate to have an incredible group of highly supportive investors who understand our mission, understand what we're trying to build, believe in us and entrepreneurs. And I think that's made an enormous amount of difference in trying to do this and finding the right people who can back you and who can support you. And then probably the last thing I'd say, just have fun with it. Something I try to remind myself and our team constantly is we are in the business of creating memories and creating experiences for people. And that's pretty unbelievable. We're not making gadgets, we're not making widgets, we're not making tools. We are giving people something that is memorable, connects parents with children, connects friends, can be a lifelong experience. I got in this because I'm a huge sports fan. I love building businesses. I'm a huge sports fan. Being a huge sports fan came from experiences with my dad and my mom, with my sisters, my friends. My sister's boyfriends from college took me. I wasn't a baseball. I'm a lacrosse guy, true blue lacrosse guy. Took me to a Yankees game when I was in 8th grade, and I had no interest in baseball. It took me to a Yankees Red Sox game, and I saw that rivalry firsthand. Then I became a diehard Yankees fan. Just incredible. You had those incredible moments, and then that cultivated really close friendships in my life through high school, and then going to school and Williams College in Massachusetts. I had all these Boston Red Sox fans, so our Yankees Red Sox rivalry was a big core to those friendships. And it's really these little moments end up being these big life changing moments. So I think anybody who works in sports is lucky to work in sports and be able to do something that drives passion and emotion and community. So just have fun with it. It's a great place to be, and I feel very lucky every day.
It really is a relationship based business. And so I wholeheartedly agree with what you mentioned there, Christian. And any last words? I don't know if we can top that, but any last words you want to share with the audience here?
Well, I'll just say, Justin, thank you so much for having me on. It's great chatting. I hope to do this more. Hope to see you at a meetup soon. Very excited about the community that you've built as well. That's you're in the community building space through within sports. It's kind of community upon community here, but excited to now be a part of that, Justin. And thanks so much for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Christian. And what's the best way for everybody to keep in touch and keep up to date with the PLL?
Yeah, so one, download the PLL app because all of our information's there, and we've built a really great product. We're gonna be playing throughout the summer on ESPN, on the ESPN app, on ESPN linear channels, with a handful of ABC games coming up. And yeah, I mean, if you haven't watched lacrosse before, check it out. It's an awesome sport. It takes coordination, it takes, a lot of physical athletic ability, strength, quickness, the whole thing. I would challenge someone to watch lacrosse and say they don't like that. Doesn't happen very rarely. People love the game. It's fast paced. It's fun. There's scoring. So definitely check it out and get out to a game too. We love putting on a great experience for our fans.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't been to a PLL game yet, but just from watching lacrosse in person, I think watching it on TV is great, but in person is even better, in my opinion. I would recommend everybody does the same.
I'll see you in Philly then, Justin.